Hello everyone, we are live from Afro Swag Media and Magazine. My name is Deborah. As always, I'll be your host on this show. And today we have a very special guest. I'll bring him to the camera so that he can introduce himself.
Well,
Hello.
Hello there. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. How are you?
Fantastic. And thank you for having me. And thank you for having me on tonight.
It's a privilege to always have you. So can you please tell us who you are?
I don't know if I should tell who I am on this broadcast. I might get you in trouble. No, I'm just kidding. No, listen, my name is Akinyemi. I am the president and CEO of the Global African Business Association. I also serve as the national political director of the Nigerian American Public Affairs Committee. I am a lifelong educator. I've been in education for well over 20 years. The last 16 years in K-12, the last 5 in higher education. I'm very passionate about education because I strongly believe that education is the foundation that will lead us to wealth and prosperity within our respective communities, not just here in the United States, but globally throughout the African diaspora. The Global African Business Association is a business support, business education network based here in Romulus, Michigan. Started in Inkster, Michigan, next door to Romulus, Michigan. Both cities are about 10 to 12 miles west of Detroit. And our focus is really, in a nutshell, of being a one-stop shop for African-based businesses in terms of empowerment, in terms of meeting your needs and moving the process forward, not just here in the United States, but across the diaspora.
So you already have fans out there. We have Medea. She said, hello, Akindele.
Hello. That's my favorite dancer in Omaha.
Yes, she is watching, and we have a bunch of other people watching as well.
Fantastic.
Wow, what an introduction. You know, that just gave me the outline of how this discussion is going to go. Thank you for making my job easy today. So without further ado, let's tackle the elections.
Okay. So go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay.
You have the floor.
Okay. So, the elections. Here's what we're faced with here in the U.S. elections are going to be coming up in November 2020, November 3rd to be exact, 2020. We have a very important election. You just heard last night that former Vice President Joe Biden has accepted the Democratic nomination for president on the Democratic side. And next week, you'll see current president, U.S. President Donald Trump, accept the nomination at the RNC convention. This is a very important election. The last 4 years of the Trump administration has been disastrous. I'm not saying that because I'm a Democrat. I'm not a Democrat. I'm independent. I've been in the Democratic Party. I've been in the Republican Party. And at the end of the day, both right wing and left wing are crazy. In my point, I feel that from an independent standpoint, especially when you're trying to empower Africans and the electoral process, is best to be independent because a majority of us have a tendency to be conservative, but also socially liberal in terms of certain policies that may benefit us. So it's great to be an independent voter, an independent thinker. However, the elections are important. We need to get out the vote in our respective communities, whether you're Nigerian or Togolese or Senegalese or Liberian. We need to get out the vote. We need to ensure that our vote count. I know that you hear this nonsense from the Trump administration, preferably Mr. Trump himself, talking about mail-in voting is lead to voter fraud. There's absolutely no evidence of that whatsoever. In fact, people have been voting absentee, including Mr. Trump and others before him, long before this was an issue. The problem is that he's lagging behind the polls. I follow Real Clear Politics very closely because they give an average of other polls to give you a real number a snapshot, I should say, of what's going on between these candidates. And he's been lagging behind the polls for quite some time. So he knows that he's lagging behind the polls. He's using scare tactics like using the post office as a politicized weapon and things like that. And we have to resist. And the way we resist is to go out, get out the vote. Your vote do count. The other thing I want to just mention to your viewers real fast is the U.S. Census. The U.S. Census is very important. We need to be counted as an African community, as a Caribbean community, part of the African diaspora here in the U.S. We need to be counted. Mr. Trump is trying to sabotage that. He's trying to stop counting the census by the end of September, when it should end by the end of October. So that would create a permanent undercount for minorities like us. And what happens with the U.S. Census, when you have an undercount, that means we don't get enough federal funding coming into our communities to benefit things like childcare, education, and most importantly, when you're talking about representation, congressional district lines and political lines, we need the right representation at the table. And so the U.S. Census is very, very important. My role as a national political director of NAPAC USA, I have been pushing the envelope, at least within the Nigerian community, but also it's not limited to just that. We need our people to get out and vote, our African community to get out and vote and participate in the U.S. Census, because our future depends on it. We have young children. We have next generation people, millennials, Gen Zs. What we do today will affect them tomorrow. So we need to be taking this election very seriously.
So you believe that our vote matter?
Vote, not only your vote matter, it counts. And your vote is your power. I know most of the time, I know people say, well, why should I vote? Donald Trump got elected. Well, when you do the analysis, and this is the non-Russian stuff. When you do the analysis, come to find out that 59% of Black people in this country voted for Hillary. Well, 4 years before that with Obama, 66% voted for Obama. So that's a big drop. So your vote counts. When you sit out and don't vote and don't participate in the civic process, this is the type of leadership you get. And so go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, what I was saying is, so it's important that we take this very seriously. Not just vote about Joe Biden. I don't want Africans within the diaspora here in the United States to just stop at Joe Biden. We have congressional races. We have a gentleman next door to you, Deborah, in Missouri, that's running for Secretary of State. His name is Yinka Folletti, and I have talked to him a few times. We've done town halls with him through NAPAC USA, and this is a gentleman. And here's the thing: this is a gentleman in the state of Missouri that's running for Secretary of State, and it's important that we here at the grassroots level raise his profile the same way Stacey Abrams' profile was raised when she ran for governor of Georgia, the same way Andrew Gillum's profile was raised when he ran for the governor for the state of Florida. It's our responsibility as a community to raise Yinka Folletti's profile as running for a Secretary of State. He's already a Democratic nominee. He's running against one of the Ashcroft sons, who is the current incumbent in the Secretary of State. Done an atrocious job as a Secretary of State, but it's name recognition that he's running against. So we need to not just donate money and resources, but we need to get people to get out there and phone bank. We need to keep social media campaigns, things like that, to raise his profile, so that when NPR does an expose on Yinka Folletti, we know that we've made it in terms of exposure, and now we got to get them across the finish line. So we have African candidates that are running. We have candidates out there, and a Liberian candidate, young sister that's running for state rep in Colorado. We just had a Nigerian young lady won her state rep seat in Minnesota, which is very significant, because I think there's only been 3 Nigerian Americans that's been elected as state rep anywhere in the United States. So that's a big deal for her to win. We have a young man who's Ghanaian, just won his nomination for Congress in the state of Oklahoma. And of course, right here in GABA, we have a member a member that's running for U.S. House of Representatives in D.C. as a shadow representative. So, I mean, these are some real historic times for our community. And it's important that we not only vote for them, but also support them and the resources they need.
So, listening to you, it seems to me like you are encouraging the African diaspora community to vote for the Democrats.
Well, I encourage Africans to vote based on public policy. We know we have Africans that are Democrats. We have Africans that are Republicans. And the thing about most Africans vote Democrat. What I normally tell them, I've been in politics over 25 years. And so one of the things about Africans voting Democrat is they normally follow a trend where African Americans vote Democrat. But you have those who are very conservative in terms of religious values. They tend to lean more Republican. So you're going to have Africans. You're going to have Africans that support Donald Trump. You're going to have Africans that support Joe Biden, and you're going to have Africans who are kind of apprehensive towards Joe Biden, but they don't like Donald Trump because of his immigration policies. So you have that dynamic going on. So it's not that we want them to vote Democrat or Republican. What we want our community to do is vote the best candidate that will move our community forward and position us to do business globally and to do business and to do business as it pertains to being immigrant friendly and also understanding the role of the African diaspora in the 21st century.
I'm glad you shifted a little bit to business. Let's talk about business and then we'll come back to the elections.
Yeah.
So business economic development. How important is it? And also, how does it impact the African diaspora community here in the US?
Well, there's a few things. We decided to set up shop as GABA in Romulus, Michigan. We were founded in Inkster, and we ended up moving down to Romulus, Michigan. Well, here's why. It's not because we don't like Inkster. It's because at that time there was some political dynamics that was not favoring us. What happened was the African Continental Free Trade Area had taken off on the continent, and so we wanted to position our organization to start doing business with Africa. I'm here in the state of Michigan. The state of Michigan is known for automobiles and agriculture and advanced manufacturing. We do business here in the state of Michigan with Canada and Mexico. Those are our trading partners, as well as Germany, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, Japan, South Korea, and other places like that in the UK. We do no business with sub-Saharan Africa. None whatsoever. And so, but we sit on the international waterway right across from Canada. So we're on the Great Lakes. So we sit on the Great Lakes, the largest fresh body of fresh water anywhere on the planet Earth, right here in Michigan on a peninsula. And we are in Canada. I can look outside my window at work, and Canada is right there, Windsor, Ontario, and we are not doing business with Africa, which is not strange because we have not had that kind of discussion. So the African Continental Free Trade Area and the African Growth Opportunity Act play a big role in business and economic development in terms of refining local urban communities and where Africans reside. So for instance, if you live in Omaha, Nebraska, now think about Omaha, Nebraska, unlike Romulus, Omaha has a very large number of Togolese people, the largest population in the United States. Now, can you imagine Togo, which Togo nationals, they can enter the U.S. on an E2 visa. Okay, Nigerians cannot enter the U.S. on an E2 visa because we do not have a treaty agreement with the United States, but the Togolese do. So
before we continue, can you tell us the difference between those two visas?
The E2 and which other visa? I got you. I could talk about the visas. I got you. So when we talk about an E2 visa, that's an investor visa. So it's an investor treaty visa. So in order for you to obtain an investor treaty visa, you have to have a treaty agreement with the U.S. So in the continent of Africa, the only countries that have a treaty agreement with the U.S. is Togo, Cameroon, Senegal, Ethiopia, Liberia, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and I think I might be missing one country, but I think those are the main countries, the main players who have a treaty agreement with the U.S. So these countries like Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, uh, they don't have a treaty agreement with the U.S. Okay. However, the sister visa to the E2 visa is the EB5 visa, which all countries are eligible for on the continent. The EB5 visa is an investor visa. You have to have one if you're in a non-unemployment area, you have to have $1.8 million of investment. In a high unemployment area, you have to have $900,000 in investment. So the EB5 visa is an investor visa that leads to permanent residency. The E2 visa doesn't lead to permanent residency, but you can renew that visa every so often to maintain your status here in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
So the Togolese, where I'm going with this, the Togolese can use an E2 visa to enter the U.S., invest in places like Omaha and Lincoln, Nebraska. They can buy property. They can invest in hotels. They can invest in these things, even as something as small as cleaners, opening a cleaners, and move the process forward. Now, when you are looking at the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is intra-trade between nations on the continent of Africa, okay, because we have the lowest percentage anywhere on the planet Earth in terms of intra-trade on the continent. So right now we're not competing with the European Union or the Southeast Asian community or anything like that, or NAFTA. What it's not called NAFTA, it's called the USMCA. We're not competing on that level yet. That's why this had to be created. But you can establish an American business out of Omaha. You could be a Togolese, establish an American business out of Omaha, set up shop back home in Togo, and participate in the African Continental Free Trade Area, and link the wealth like that. The African Growth Opportunity Act provides a lot of benefits. One of the benefits that the African Growth Opportunity Act, what we call AGOA, let's say for instance, I am bringing in products from Togo or Nigeria or Kenya, and the United States have an agreement with those nations. Those products, if it's on the AGOA list, are tariff exempt. So you have the African Growth Opportunity Act, the African Continental Free Trade Area, and you have these various visas that our community can engage in to build a community here in the United States. We can vote, we can invest, we can build legacies, and link the wealth back to our home nations.
Right.
That's what we have to do in the 21st century as Africans. We have to be able to create our own economic ecosystem through small, medium-sized enterprises to move the needle forward.
Absolutely. We have a lot of people actually connected, and Naya, she is watching. We have Winifred, hello King, Akindele, and obviously we have Medea. Hello, Akindele.
Hello.
Thank you for watching, and I saw a lot more people watching. If you guys have comments or you want to give a shout out to anyone, please type it in the comment box and we will make sure we show it. Thank you so much for watching. So tell me, Akindele, tell me about your work, some of the work that you're doing right now in Michigan in order to achieve every single thing that we've talked about. I know you do a lot.
Yeah, I do too much. I'm trying to pass that ball to somebody else. What we're doing here in Michigan, well, let's start with the state of Michigan. We're home base in the state of Michigan. We have the largest hub in GABA in the state of Michigan. What we're doing several things here in Michigan. We recently, State Senator Erica Geis, who's not just a personal friend, an ally, just a kind of that brother-sister relationship that we have. She helped. I was working with a few colleagues of mine in the African Caribbean community, to introduce a bill to create an African Caribbean Commission here in the state of Michigan. Why is that so important? It's important because we do not have a voice at the state level, the things that we've been talking about tonight. And so that bill was introduced. Back in March. Excuse me, not March. Well, I'm thinking way back. July. It was introduced in July 22nd to be exact. And what's interesting was the Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, she went on to sign an executive order to create a Black Leadership Advisory Council, which kind of mirrors the bill. So they're what they're doing right now is reviewing who's going to be on that council of that. But we're the ones that started to train, and we're actually still moving forward of getting into the governor's desk that bill. So that's one thing on the political end that we're doing. The other thing we're doing right now in the city of Inkster is putting the city. I'll start with Inkster, and then we'll talk about Romulus. Right here in Inkster is putting together a cultural arts district. So we have a project called Steam and Heat. Is our community development project. We're moving forward with a cultural arts district, which, by the way, we have a benefit concert scheduled for this coming Sunday to raise money for that cultural arts district. That project is being led. The concert is being led by our GABA member, our board member, Oberichi Ubaku, and then in terms of the actual cultural arts district itself is being quarterbacked by our curator, Mr. Paul Carr. So the purpose of this whole cultural arts component, this cultural arts district, is to attract new populations, new businesses, spur economic development, and to create property, and increase in property values. And so the current mayor of the city of Inkster, Mayor Patrick Wimberly, who is an ally of GABA, has embraced this. He campaigned on this when he was running for mayor. We gave him campaign tips, educated him on the purpose of it. I think Paul, through his organization, Detroit RAF, they put together a 3D component of what the cultural arts district should look like, and we're moving forward with that. And so that's one angle. What we ended up doing when I was on the myself and a couple other GABA members were on our Downtown Development Authority. We launched that cultural arts district, and we did 2 mural development projects to jumpstart that. And then I was also the president of the Inkster Library Board, which is called Leanna Hicks Library of Inkster. I was the president and moved a $1.8 million capital improvement project to build a brand new library in the city of Inkster. So linking those components together, it spearheads the cultural arts district. And now we have a third thing that fell in our lap. To show you how God works. Wayne County Community College District has launched a satellite campus right there in the city of Inkster. So that's that third component, part of the cultural arts district. Now, why is that important? Because Inkster is about 24,000 residents, 6 square miles. The poverty rate is 39%. The unemployment rate hovers between 11 to 13%. There's no real economy there. And you have a lot of Gen Xers and baby boomers that live in the city of Inkster. So there's not a lot going on in terms of economic viability in the city of Inkster. So what we wanted to do is do that cultural arts component because it's very, very key of revitalizing that city. And so that's important. And the community college being present will give a degree of education. It is a community college town, believe it or not. It's not like the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor or Michigan State University with East Lansing. It is a community college town. And so what's missing is the economic development factor of that community college town. And that's where GABA comes into play at. The other thing we're working on that's major is a urban agricultural sustainability project in the city of Inkster. And that's on the south side of the city where nobody touches the south side. The South Side historically was very significant of where Black businesses thrived in the late 50s and early 60s. No one has talked about revitalizing the South Side, but we talked to the mayor early on, before he was mayor and after he's mayor. Hey, let us get a few lots down there and let us revitalize that community with some projects. And he said, hey, go for it. And so we're working on currently an urban sustainability project through Morehouse College and USDA and other entities that we're trying to bring together to create this sustainability where we can grow our own crops, create farmers markets and things like that, because Inkster is a food desert. So we're working on these two things as a community development project in the city of Inkster, as well as still courting, Africans on Caribbean people into the city to help revitalize it. And we're not just doing that locally, but doing that internationally. In the city of Romulus, our logistics director is working on a project called International Community Market, and that's the grocery store. Romulus is 36 square miles, 24,000 residents. That's where Detroit Metropolitan Airport is located, and there's no grocery store. No grocery store. When we met with the mayor a couple of times in the city of Romulus and their economic development director, one of the things now remember the airport is there. Across the street from the airport is a hotel district. Now, what people don't understand about Romulus, Michigan, is that they cannot collect taxes from the airport, and they cannot collect taxes from the hotels.
Wow.
So he was talking about some major developments like, can you find some African investors to build condominiums? Can you find African investors to build advanced manufacturing? Can you find them to open up a restaurant? Can you find them to open up a grocery store? Well, we took on the grocery store piece because apparently major grocery stores have come in and out of Romulus for years. And this is an opportunity of a lifetime for us to really embrace not just the grocery store concept, but also create an African supply chain between here and sub-Saharan Africa. Goes back to what we talked about, the African Continental Free Trade Area. Goes back to what we talked about with AGOA. And so this is the type of thing, these are the type of things that we're actively working on right now. This is not make-believe or something we just thought about. We've been to Lansing, to our state capitol, to talk to our lawmakers. Again, Erica Geis, our state senator down in Romulus, is 100% behind this. The state representative, Alex Garza, is behind us. The mayor, everybody's behind these projects that we're working in GABA. And one of the things that African organizations have to realize is that when you're working with local communities that are predominantly African-American or kind of mixed, you have to come in with a plan, and the plan has to make sense. And you also have to understand the importance of a master plan within your city. You have to understand what the zoning ordinance look like in your city and the city charter. If Africans understood those three concepts, I guarantee you in less than 5 years, we can take those cities over because we will understand those laws and ordinances and work towards those things to benefit us.
Wow, you are doing a lot, and we just have a comment here. I don't want to miss that. Tavisha, we are following your lead here in Georgia with an African caucus. Great leadership, Academy, Akinyemi.
Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, that's a lot. The question that comes to me is, over the course of all these years, have you been able to duplicate yourself?
That's a task. That's a task. I'm training folks to duplicate myself. I am. At some point, I want to just pack my bags and move to Abuja, Nigeria. At some point.
And move to Abuja?
And move to Abuja. I don't know about moving 100%, but I want to at least be in a position to split my time for investments and for opportunities in other parts of the globe. I feel that black people, no matter if you live in the United States or Africa or the Caribbean, you should put, or Latin America, you shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket. You should be able to spread your wealth in other parts of the globe so that your children can realize that you as a mother or as a father, a husband or a wife, you had all this wealth globally. We shouldn't put all our eggs in one basket. So to answer your question directly, I am working on duplicating myself. I think that's very important at the age I'm at right now. I have been doing this for over 30 years right now. And, at some point, God will tell you that is enough and you have to obey God. So it's very important for me to pass that knowledge on. One thing about GABA that I take pride in is the fact that I've been able to build a team of millennials and Gen Zs. I think that's very, very, very important. I know we have a lot of Gen Xers, but 54% of the organization are millennials. 80% of the organization are women. So I think those.
Woohoo! GABA girls, I saw somebody posting. Yes.
I think that's.
Hello from Georgia, GABA girls.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think the GABA girls are the engine. And that's my global project specialist, Davisha L. Johnson, who is just absolutely phenomenal. She's just phenomenal. I don't know what words to describe her in her grit, her hunger to win, and her dedication to shift the dialogue and shift the movement, not just from a local standpoint, but from a global standpoint. And so and she came up with that term, GABA Girls, and the GABA Girls, that platform itself is not just the name, the platform of the GABA Girls have caught fire in GABA. And that's what's driving the Global African Business Association to another level. And that's what myself and our co-founder, Harari Olamake, that's what we had discussed early on when we started this movement as the National African Business Association. We wanted young people to get engaged with what's going on in African diaspora. We want to teach you your history in terms of what Marcus Garvey did and what the civil rights leaders did, what the Black Power movement leaders did, and learn from them so that you won't make the same mistakes at the global level. And so, we are very thankful that the GABA girls and GABA guys have stepped up to the plate and moved things forward. One thing I try to do as a president and a CEO of GABA is to ensure that that our people are okay. Show empathy. I think one of the problems in African organizations and African American organizations is the lack of empathy. Empathy is very, very important when you're dealing with wealth building and building a coalition organization. You have to make sure outside of them, you ask them to do work, you have to make sure they're okay. You have to make sure that their children are okay. You have to make sure that their parents are okay. We have a lot of challenges in GABA, and I take the time to really, really embrace the membership, embrace them on a personal level, so I can to make sure if I need to fly out or call, or whatever the case may be, I want to be there for my team so that we can win in the end when it comes to business. And so I think those things are very important. And we are just enjoying the journey right now.
Wow, that's impressive. So let's talk a little bit about remote learning and the COVID-19.
Sure.
Then we'll go back to the elections, and then we will end with some of the challenges that all these African communities here in the US are facing, and how we can overcome, that the biggest challenge is competition, and also being unable to come in harmony and work together towards the same goal. So remote learning and COVID-19, what are your thoughts?
We have what's interesting is that we're in the fourth industrial revolution. You hear me talk about you yourself. Others have talked, and GABA has heard me talk about the fourth industrial revolution religiously, like scripture. And the reason for that is because of COVID-19. COVID-19, I just talked to someone recently earlier today that COVID-19 has done a wonderful job of disrupting things that's going to force us to change. And so remote learning, or what you call online learning or cyber education, is one of those things. Right now, there's a national debate on cyber education and online learning. How are children going to learn online and things of that nature? I work in higher education. Just yesterday, our community college made an announcement. I'm talking about, when I say yesterday, I mean I'm walking out the door literally, and there's a mass email from the chancellor's office. We're going to online learning as of Monday. That's the first day of school. So, we're going to online learning, and I keep telling folks this story. The University of Phoenix was doing online learning 30-something years ago. Everybody was like, "Oh, that's not a real school. What do you mean online learning? You're never going to get a real degree." Blah 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 blah. And Walden University, they clowned Capella, they clowned Walden, they clowned the University of Phoenix, and look where we're at today. Cyber education is a 21st century model of education. We often talk about charter schools and tax credits and traditional public schools, But guess what? All those entities now have to deal with cyber education and virtual learning. But see, here's what I tell people, Deborah. What I tell people also is that in the next less than 5 years, you're going to be talking to students are going to be being taught by machine learning, by artificial intelligence. We're not even at that conversation level yet. We're arguing about cyber education and online learning and virtual learning, and we're not even talking about machine learning, where a artificial intelligence entity will be teaching our children math, science, and technology. And so online learning is very vital globally. It's a way of the future. It's necessary, and it creates interconnectivity between us here in the U.S. and the rest of the African diaspora. Dr. Paula Whitaker Watkins, who is one of our board directors, have a company that deals with cyber education. And right now we're engaged in Nigeria with cyber education, Tanzania with cyber education. She's looking to expand across the continent. And where students can come into her program, learn basic skills, receive a U.S. diploma, high school diploma, that can translate into a community college level, where you're at, where I'm at. And so instead of going through WES or ECE to get your transcript converted, you can have a U.S. high school diploma, use that to enter the college of your choice here in the U.S. And that's through cyber education, what we're doing in GABA right now. So it's very necessary.
So this is a personal experience, when all this started and they were having discussions about remote learning, hybrid learning, and whatnot. My thing was, for sure, my son, he's 14, he's going to do the remote learning full time. Mm-hmm. Monday, school started, right? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, every 15 minutes. I received a text message from him. Hey, Mom, I'm having such issue. I'm having this issue. And I'm like, okay, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, every 15 minutes. How long is this going to continue? Mm-hmm. And then on Thursday, he said, Mom, can I just go back to school? And I'm like, really? What is going on? And a lot of parents have been experiencing the same thing.
Yeah.
That being said, what about being connected to other humans?
So I used to work I'll tell you something personal. I used to work for an environment, a cyber environment where you had human connection and interactivity. What I highly recommend, me as an educator professionally, are school districts to offer hybrid learning. And that hybrid learning means that, hey, your son can go to school. Your son goes to school 3 days a week. And the other 2 days he's at home learning, doing his lessons. Or there's another type of hybrid learning where, and then Dr. Paula Whitaker Watkins can attest to this because she ran something like this similar here in Michigan. But I also worked in environments like this where the students are coming into the classroom and they're working virtually. And we have a lot of programs across the U.S. that's doing that. I know Davisha L. Johnson has a person there, I believe in Georgia or Alabama. Davisha, you got to correct me. But I listened to it when Davisha had her program. She had that gentleman on. He does virtual learning. He does that type of virtual learning as well, hybrid models and things of that nature. But where I'm going with all this is there are different types of modalities that we can utilize in K-12 so that your son can learn, as opposed to staying 5 days at home, in front of a computer with no type of human connections. There should be a hybrid model there. Here's another thing we don't talk about. What about students with special education needs? Those special education students need to be in the classroom. Same thing, hybrid model. Special education student can function if there's some structure. Okay, and so we need to be in the business of moving into the 21st century, but at the same token, ensuring that our children are safe, not just safe from violence, but safe from public health issues, ensuring that the parent is engaged. So that means if you're as a mother or someone as a father, can't go to parent-teacher conferences, but there should be communication with email, communication with text messaging, things like that, to ensure that your child's success is met. So we need to move in that model.
Mm-hmm. Wow, wow, wow. Yeah, I love the hybrid model, and it seems like it solves a lot of problems. So we said we are going to come back to the challenges.
Okay.
Challenges that we have in our African communities, especially the diaspora here in the US. What are some of the solutions or alternatives to come together? Go ahead.
Well, I think some of the challenges. Well, let me start with the challenges. I think some of the challenges come from the fact that white folks have done a good job of thinking that we're different from one another, and we're really not. Just because you speak French and I speak English don't mean that we're really different. You just happen to speak French because you come from a French-speaking country. I come from an English-speaking country, but guess what? We have the same issues. So how do we come together? Just because you're Catholic and I may be apostolic, that don't mean that we can't work together on educational issues. Just because I think the biggest problem, Deborah, that we have in any community, whether you're Togolese, Sudanese, or Nigerian, or Ghanaian, or whatever, is tribalism. And I think the tribalism has corrupted us psychologically, spiritually, and in many cases financially, because we should be at a point in this country where our communities are flowing with cash flow and economic development, and where that person that may be non-African, if that person want to be elected, they got to come through our community. But we're not there yet because we're too busy trying to compete against one another. The immigration debate in this country is centered around social justice issues. Now, I'm not against that, but what about immigration that's surrounded about economic issues? There are visas. I talked about one. I talked about two tonight, which is the E2 and the EB5. You have Donald Trump that has not. He's blocked the L1A visas, which is an intra-company visa. So that means if Deborah has AfroSwag magazine in Omaha, and she goes back home to Togo and set up AfroSwag magazine, and you need the managing director over there to come here, you're not going to get that person here on a B1 or B2 visa. You're going to get them here on an L1A visa. Well, Donald Trump blocked that. That's a business visa. And that's a visa that's not being talked about, or H-1Bs, or these other types of visas that are needed to empower Africans here in the U.S. and back home. I believe also we need to understand and this is a big one. We need to understand the importance of African women in the 21st century as it pertains to economic development and business development. We need to understand that. And millennials and young people, our organizations are still being led by people that's my mom's age, great aunt's age, and they don't want to pass the baton. I am not 50 years old, and I am ready to pass the baton in GABA.
Wow.
You see where I'm going?
Mm-hmm.
I am not 50 years old, and I'm ready to pass the baton in GABA. So that tells you that I take legacy building very seriously. Now, in order to create those solutions, it's going to take a 21st century mindset to transform the spirit and to transform our mindset. We have to understand that here in the United States, that Black people, whether you're African American or African or Caribbean, whether you're Afro-Latina, we are interconnected, and we all play a big role in the economic sustainability, the academic sustainability, and most importantly, the moral sustainability of our community. We talk about the differences between African American and African, and what and those type of differences. But I tell African Americans all the time, Akon is right. You could be a millionaire in Africa in 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
I tell Africans in on the continent, you could be a millionaire in 5 years here in the United States because you have a brand that don't exist in the U.S. So we need to really be serious about, and this is not just business, even in politics. You have the Congressional Black Caucus.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the Congressional Black Caucus, on average, I think their average age is 63 or 64 years old. So I understand why they have a civil rights mentality. However, we are never going to transform the Congressional Black Caucus if we on the ground are not engaged with that process. We can't save Nigeria or Cameroon or any other country if we do not have a structure in place to educate a Congressional Black Caucus member as to why you need to be engaged in this and how you play a role in this in terms of building your own community up. So it's not about Democrat or Republican or independent. It's about who has common sense. And so Africans have to be engaged at a level that's not about sensationalism, but sustainability.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can do that, whether you're in Georgia, or New York, or Michigan, or Nebraska, if we can do that, and we could do that at the local level, goes back to the three things I talked about earlier: city charter, master plan, zoning ordinance. You control those three things, you control the entire city. If you could control a city, that means you control a congressional district.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Or a senatorial district. See that? Politics are local. So if you control that area in your community where those pocket votes, let's say, for instance, you have 6,000 votes out of your African community, and that congressional person needs 6,000 votes, who are they going to come to? That's how you play the game. That's how you win. Period.
Wow. So tell me, while listening to you, you mentioned that we have to narrate our own story. And here at AfroSwag, we strongly believe that we have to narrate our own story. As a matter of fact, the tagline is The Ethnic Wave. And our slogan is let's engage, narrate, and empower.
Right.
Why is it important to narrate our own story?
Because white folks have been narrating our stories for eons. White folks have been narrating our story about Africa. They've narrated our story about America. Here, I'll tell you something right now. Before I even get to Africa, let's talk about America. White conservatives will tell you that Democratic ran cities are ran in the ground. Okay? Black conservatives adopt that mentality. And they say the same thing. Here's the thing that black conservatives forget. The white conservative has thrown a bone at you for you to repeat that, and Democratic cities are ran down. But the white conservative is at the country club with the white liberal having a stake about how to gentrify your neighborhood. And they come in and gentrify your neighborhood. You take your Jesus money on Sunday and put it in a white bank. The white bank is giving that white conservative and that white liberal who own a business together the loan products to gentrify your neighborhood. Period, point blank. All because they control a narrative that you believe in. Here's another narrative they control. Africans are different from African Americans. Okay? And they control that narrative and got us believing that. While those same white folks are going to Africa, taking your rubber, your oil, your gas, okay? They're taking your copper, your gold, your diamonds, okay? cobalt, right? What you have in your cell phones come from the DRC, Democratic Republic of the Congo. But they're telling you, as a French-speaking sister, don't go to the Democratic Republic of the Congo. See that? So I'm saying the reason why a magazine like Afro Swag, Media Magazine, is important is because you have an opportunity to change the narrative of what the African diaspora is really offering in the 21st century.
Mm-hmm.
We have to tell our narrative to our Black politicians, to our Black lawyers, to our educators, to our youth, to our Black union folks here in the United States, because they don't know. They still think they come from Mississippi, and that may be some truth to that. But can you imagine? I remember a friend of mine. She lives in Virginia. She's from New Orleans. I remember a couple of years ago, she said, GABA needs to invest in New Orleans. I said, why is that?
Mm-hmm.
She said, because New Orleans sit on a port and the Mississippi River empties to the Gulf of Mexico. She said, more importantly, though, New Orleans is a French-speaking city. So if you can court the people from Senegal, Togo, Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, the DRC to come and invest in New Orleans, our communities that are desolate could look different in 5 to 10 years if we can utilize the EB-5 visa. That's exactly what she told me. I said, well, I need to really, really consider that, because that's a conversation we should be telling that narrative amongst our own community.
Mm-hmm.
I think the mistake we make as Africans, a group of Africans in this country, is that we try to isolate ourselves from the general African American population. There are some differences. There are some cultural differences, and there are some hard issues
Mm-hmm.
that Africans must address that African Americans may not have to deal with. African Americans don't have to deal with immigration issues. They were born here. They don't have to worry about when they get to a community college or a college about an F-1 visa. They're citizens. They could just apply for financial aid. The Africans have to worry about that. And then there are some things that African Americans go through, like the horrors of slavery and that mentality that exists today, where Africans need to understand the plight of African Americans that left our homelands and came here illegally, to understand that there's a connection between colonization and slavery. See, when we tell our narratives and our stories, and those things are brought together by Afro Swag Media Magazine through Afrobeat and music, and hip hop started in New York and it's all over the world now. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When we link the wealth in the diaspora through culture, through economics, through education,
Mm-hmm.
marriage, through love, that's when we become unstoppable. And that's when we become unbreakable.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to have a real dialogue. I tell Black Republicans all the time, you're angry at African Americans for not voting Democrat, but you're not even talking to the Africans. And they're more conservative than you are.
Mm.
See where I'm going with that? Because someone above them have given a narrative to them.
Mm-hmm.
We should be controlling both sides of the political aisle with our agenda, our global agenda. And our global agenda has to be one that is about the African diaspora from the US, Canada, and the rest of the continent and the Caribbean.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Wow. So, any last comments?
Well, it's always a pleasure to be on a show like this with you. I think, I've always said to you, you're a phenomenal woman, great, phenomenal mother. Your son will praise you over and over again for your sacrifice. I'm always here for you to support this magazine, to support any effort that you put out there. I think it's important. I think Omaha, Nebraska is ripe for economic development from the Togolese and Sudanese communities. I think there should be a level of mentorship. We see individual business owners, but how do you bring those business owners together under one umbrella? How do you engage City Hall in Omaha as one voice in one community as taxpayers? How do you engage the school system? Wow, that's a big one.
Yeah.
And the reason why that's a big one is because, can you imagine? I don't know how many people sit on the Omaha school board, but let's say, for instance, there's 9 seats, and 5 out of those 9 seats are Togolese and Sudanese.
Wow.
You control, at that point, you control the direction of education the way you see fit. So instead of French being an elective, French is a mandatory subject for you to graduate. The only way you do that is if you're in control. How do I know that? Well, you look in Detroit, you have a city called Hamtramck, Michigan. Hamtramck, Michigan is traditionally Polish. The Polish people started moving out, and the Yemeni and the Bangladeshi people started moving in. They started buying up the houses on the block. They started buying up the small businesses. And then they got politically involved. They took over the school board. They took over city council. And they even managed to even elect one of their own as a state representative that covered both Hamtramck and Detroit, which is unheard of. Black folks split the vote up in Detroit, and the Yemeni guy won. So where I'm going with that is, we have an obligation to do the same thing politically and economically. And so my last words is, let's finish 2020 on a strong note. We know we're going to do a lot of virtual stuff. Let's finish 2020 on a strong note, and let's enter the 21st century talking about not just talking about the African diaspora, but let's practice the African diaspora academically and economically so that we can move the process forward.
It's always an honor to have you.
Thank you.
I mean, you empower, you motivate, and you are very inspirational. Thank you so much for being on the show today. And thank you for your kind word. I believe we'll have you back sometime
always
before the end of the year so that we can, you can update us on the progress. And I think we have one more comment here.
Okay.
Imagine if you did the same thing in the areas of government, education, media, art, healthcare, family, and economic.
That's true. And that's very true. And I just 30 seconds to piggyback on that. I think I think that's important. If we could do that, what Mr. Winston is talking about in a neighborhood. So you ain't gonna have the whole city in a neighborhood.
Right. Wow.
And we have this ecosystem in a neighborhood where we register people to vote. Now that's power. Real
Absolutely.
Power.
And we said we were going to come back to the elections. I'm glad you mentioned that. Let's talk about it. What are your last words on the elections when it comes to the African diaspora?
We have to be registered to vote. We have to participate in the U.S. Census. We have to examine our congressional and senatorial candidates carefully. We have to examine, if you're in a state where there's a gubernatorial race, you have to examine those candidates carefully. It has to be a little bit more than just immigration issues, especially if you're in a state or a local or county type of election deal. They really don't touch immigration issues. So now you got to look at issues about your property taxes. You have to look at issues about education. You have to look at issues about transportation. How do we improve transportation in my community? How do we create a funding stream to refurbish housing in our community? How do we remove blight? So these are issues that Africans need to be very aware of. They need to be a stakeholder in this election, and there is absolutely no excuse or no rule to sit out of this election. You must vote.
Right. So you've heard it. You must vote. Thank you so much again. one more time for being on the show. On this note, thank you for staying with us. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Everybody that connected tonight, we appreciate you. On this note, have a good weekend. Bye bye. And thank you, Akindele.
Thank you.